Language and Culture by Olga Rivera, Teaching and Learning a Second Language from a Cultural Approach, August 13, 2017. Research proposal. The learning of a language implies knowledge of the culture in which it's based, especially the problems of communication. For example, cooperative learning deficiency among peers is currently one of the main issues in intercultural learning. The difficulty students encounter in appropriate activities to understand their own culture in order to have an intercultural understanding approach when evaluating aspects, similarities, or comparisons. For this reason, the phenomenon of cultural diversity in the classroom introduces us to urges of constructing a paradigm of diversity thinking capable of considering its value and wealth. It requires the development of an open and flexible curriculum capable and offering integrative and diversified response that based on the analysis of the context and the student general collaborative practices with methodologies that offer a response to diversity on learning with activities in line with the similarities and with the resources that allow success and knowledge of our students. General objectives: to present analysis of data, critical view on new perspective on the intercultural communicative competence in the teaching of foreign language. Specific objectives: to define a relevant and appropriate methodological strategy to understand the intercultural communicative approach. To finding the didactic approaches made by the experts. To describe the areas of study relevant of the cultural component, theoretical framework, the development of intercultural competence, for example, how language affects the cultural formation of student cultural understanding and the factors that help the acquisition of the second language. Citron, 1995. The conception and the previous formation of teacher and student, for example, Ryan 1996 studied the relation between the conception of cultural of certain professors and the programming and the construction that they realize them. Prodomon 1992 studied student view of the foreign language class should consist of the educational courses consisting of the classes foreign language is often meeting point between different subjects belonging to different educational culture, and this fact affect what happened in the classroom. Guerin 1997, for example, there is a study that analyzes the conflict that arise from applying communicative models of language teaching coming from Western culture in Eastern cultural contexts. The Council of European promotes a design for defining the evaluation of sociocultural competence. Brian and Sartre, 1994, position of both American and European contents have come together in common perspective from a communicative vision of language teaching. Methodology interview. There was an interview of 5 questions on the importance of teaching culture in foreign language classroom to teach from the teachers area of 3 teachers from the St. London School in the city of Bogota. Question number 1. What strategy do you work more frequently to teach communicative skills in cultural contexts? Teacher number 1. The use of simulation as a pedagogical tool to promote the acquisition. Teacher number 2. It's necessary to test that allow the first and carrying out the knowledge to improve the Decoding the integrative or language-related material all decrease the retrieval and information when it is necessary for its use. Teacher number 3, the evaluation rubric that involves the processes of information for the process of learning, or are the use of college straw retrieve and use the information. Question number 2, what main characteristics do you identify to teach cultural contents? Teacher number 1, identify the special traits or behavior that individuals use to help them understand, learn, to retain new information that they will lead the student to reflection and stimulate critical thinking. Teacher number 2, the type of learning strategies used by the student depend on the individual differences, such as their beliefs, affection, state of behavior, learning is experiences. Teacher number 2, language learning techniques try to have the student reflect on their thoughts and action and individual use to achieve a learning goal. Question number 3, what approaches make learning successfully in the context of teaching culture? Teacher number 1, observe behavior to action used by a student to make language learning more successful, self-directed, and enjoyable. Teacher number 2, choose among the most appropriate characteristics to solve a specific problem, are also able to adapt them to needs of the specific situation and determine their level of success. Teacher number 3, the motivation of learning a second language also needs an active and creative participation of the student in this process through application and individualized learning techniques. Question number 4, what analysis have you done on understanding the student and less advantageous student? Teacher number 1, students who understand more about the topic can have the less advantage in their learning process. Teacher number 2, cooperation is definitely an approach that must be applied for active participation. Teacher number 3, analyze the characteristics that make your learning more successful than another during the learning process. Identify the needs of learners who present less understanding of the topics. Question number 5, what problem is presented in the understanding of another cultures? Teacher number 1, mainly the tolerance to really understand the difference of cultural diversity. The cultural clashes that arise when its culture had very different characteristics and our knowing how to behave and address a keen way to sentence our construction and political correct in England, for example, petition are often more formal than those in North America. Teacher number 3, culture that not involved it is now true in contact with other cultures that at least be interesting then nowadays with the technology by communication we have access to technology but contact between culture but had different characteristics at the present is committed to interculturality that suppose respectful relationship between cultures. Schedule of the activities. Conclusion: it is recent field of research with a great interest in an educational context. Increasingly oriented toward the development of intercultural competence, analyze and try to explain the treatment cultural component with the classes of foreign language. That's why the traditional and structured curriculum is basically an interventory in linguistic elements, graduates and sequences in terms of the structural complexity. The new curriculum consists of the inventory of communication function. Example, asking for service, seeking information, changing topics, expressing disagreement. Notion. Example, conceptual at distance, duration, quantity, quality, place, size, organization around different scenarios and situation or things. Thank you for your attention.